Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Anthony with the VR Game Rankings YouTube channel, and you are tuned in to our daily vlog series. We are now up to episode 111. It is Monday, March 5th. It's the start of a brand new week, and we do have some interesting news stories to go ahead and jump into. But you know what? Before we get into that, I want to actually talk about a VR game that I have been incredibly late to the party about. And before I actually talk about that game, I want to give you guys just a quick little backstory about covering these VR games and some of the challenges that someone in my position, or if you work for various VR gaming websites or other YouTubers or anybody basically that's in the VR gaming industry, especially the PC VR gaming industry, some of the challenges that we have to deal with so many small indie games. And like, basically, the thing is, like, this is the reason why I'm so incredibly late to the party on this game that I'm about to talk about, is because it is a challenge, man. There are so many little games that are always being announced and are always being talked about. And the problem is that if you completely ignore all these little games, you will miss out on some true gems. Like, some incredible games have started out as being just super tiny games and have become major VR franchises. But then on the other hand, if you try to cover every single little VR game that comes down the pipe, what will happen is you'll be on Reddit, or you'll be on some various forum somewhere, or some various website, and there are so many little VR games that are constantly announced here and there, and you'll click on that story, or you'll click on that forum thread, and you'll see some video for some game, and you start looking at it and you're like, oh my god, this is amateur hour. This is like two guys in their mom's garage that are making their very first game, not their very first VR game, their very first game, period. A couple of guys that are screwing around in Unity, and I'm not trying to disparage anybody that's doing this. In fact, I have the utmost respect for anybody out there that is going to start working on a VR game and take it from a thought that's in their mind and actually create a finished product. I mean, I have tremendous respect for everybody out there, the amateurs included, but in terms of like covering this stuff, I wish that I could somehow filter between what games are not really worth mentioning so much and then the other ones that are, because there are definitely some hidden gems. But one of the situations I get into is I've been kind of jaded because I've clicked on so many stories about so many different games. I've watched so many different YouTube clips of so many different games, and sometimes you click on it and you're like, oh, please give me my 30 seconds back. Why did I click on this story? Why did I click on this YouTube video? This is nothing for me. But then there's these other games, you never heard of them before. You click on it and you're like, oh my god, I've discovered a gem. This could be a huge game. And then the other challenge that you have in covering all this stuff, and this is more specifically towards Reddit, but also on other various forums as well, this idea of guerrilla marketing. Now, what is guerrilla marketing? Well, basically, there is nothing stopping an indie developer from creating 30 to 40 fake Reddit accounts. Like, they could do this 6 months in advance. They could create all these different fake Reddit accounts, all these different fake personas. They could post every day to all kinds of different subreddits with these fake Reddit accounts, all in preparation for when their actual game is going to be close to launch. And then they can use all these fake Reddit accounts to try to drum up a completely fabricated hype and like a community excitement around a particular game that is completely manufactured. It's guerrilla marketing. I've fallen victim to this on Reddit before. I'm sure if you've spent a lot of time on the Vive subreddit, the Oculus subreddit, or even PSVR subreddit, you've fallen victim to this as well. It's guerrilla marketing, and it is a valuable tactic, unfortunately, for these developers if they want to go down that road. I think it's pretty cheesy. I think it's really lame. It's kind of despicable despicable in a way, but a lot of these developers, they're going down this road and they're using this guerrilla marketing. So that's the other thing, is you don't know if the hype is even real or not. So those are kind of some of the issues that you deal with if you're covering the PC VR space. And so that's kind of my explanation for why this game has slipped under the radar for me. I've seen this game announced a ton of times. I've seen a ton of Reddit threads about this. I think I've seen it on Upload VR once or twice. I think I've seen it on Road to VR once or twice. I may have seen it somewhere else, but every time I saw it, I just kind of thought, that's probably a dud. I don't need to worry about that. So what game am I talking about? I'm talking about Beat Saber. Yes, every time I saw Beat Saber previously, I thought, Beat Saber, what is Beat Saber? We already have Audio Shield, we already have soundboxing, we already have Airtone, we already have Thumper. It sounds like another rhythm action VR game, but it's probably lame. It's probably not that big of a deal. So every time I saw Beat Saber show up here or show up there, I just kind of ignored it. But the problem is it keeps showing up. It keeps showing up places. And last night I finally relented and I finally clicked on a YouTube video, a mixed reality video of Beat Saber. And holy smokes, this game looks absolutely incredible. I mean, this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is why you cannot ignore all these little games that randomly show up, because every once in a while there is going to be a diamond in the rough that will blow your freaking mind. And I really believe, like Beat Saber, this could be absolutely magical. I've seen some mixed reality footage of it. The soundtrack is pumping. The gameplay looks incredibly exciting. In fact, why don't I roll a few seconds of some mixed reality footage that really blew me away? Go ahead and roll it.
I've been living free. I don't know what to do or say, but I know what I need. If you wanna escape with me, come take my hand. Let me show you another way to a better land. A better land.
Yeah, I mean, now, isn't that amazing? It looks incredible. It looks really incredible. Now, one of the things that you have to caution yourself when you watch videos like this is a mixed reality video. And as you notice, none of those scenes featured a 45-year-old fat plumber playing the game in mixed reality. No, instead we have young, attractive people playing mixed reality games. I mean, that doesn't hurt, of course, and the soundtrack is pumping. And then also these people, it looks like they played this game 1,000 times and they know it inside and out, and so they're playing the game perfectly, so that makes it look super cool as well. If the video was showing somebody playing the game horribly, it might look a little bit different, but this game does look spectacular. I cannot even tell a lie. I mean, watching the gameplay video of it, at first I was thinking, oh, you're just banging away at stuff with kind of like lightsabers, and it's kind of like Audio Shield, but with lightsabers, right? But it's more intricate than that. You have these arrows going different ways. There's different ways you have to slice and dice it. it looks absolutely spectacular. It looks like it's going to be a hell of an exercise game too. That could be maybe slightly of a downside for some people. I know sometimes I don't want to jump into Sprint Vector if I just took a shower like 45 minutes earlier and I'm feeling kind of fresh and clean, and I don't want to kind of get a little bit hot and sweaty playing Sprint Vector. So that might be one of the only downsides you could think of with this game, but man, it looks like a ton of fun. The other thing that I'm really thinking about this game, Beat Saber, is we're always looking for VR's killer app. You know, we're looking for a game that is so amazing that it convinces all your flat gaming friends to actually be interested in VR. And even though this is like an action rhythm game, and it does, you know, that's not the genre that would pop to mind when you're thinking about a killer app. But really, when you watch the videos of this, I don't think there's any way this experience could be recreated with just using a flat screen. I think you pretty much have to be in VR for this to really work the way that it needs to work. And I could easily see if a lot of the really huge YouTubers, you know, Jacksepticeye, PewDiePie, you know, all these different big mainstream YouTubers that have like millions of subs, if they play this game, especially if they play it in mixed reality and they, you know, do it really good, I can imagine millions of people viewing Beat Saber and thinking, oh my God, I gotta get VR. This looks so freaking cool. And that's what Beat Saber is about. Also, for VR arcades, imagine this. If I was the owner of a VR arcade, one thing that I would do at the very front of my VR arcade, I would create like a cube, a green screen cube, where I would have somebody in there playing. Now, the front of it would be glass so that people from the outside could see this person playing Beat Saber. They would be in a green screen setup, and then outside of the arcade, you would have all these monitors lined up with speakers, and it would show the mixed reality footage of them playing Beat Saber, and then you would be able to look down and see the actual person playing it. You would look up and you'd see the mixed reality version. If this was in like a shopping mall, I could imagine crowds of people gathering, like huge crowds of people forming around this, being like, oh my God, look at that. That looks so freaking cool. That's what this game Beat Saber could do. I mean, and am I out on an island here? I don't know. I just saw this mixed reality footage and I was truly blown away by it. This game came completely out of the blue for me. I was not tracking this game. I mean, I heard about it a million times, but I just kind of ignored it, you know, jaded a little bit, right? But anyway, this game is being developed by Hyperbolic Magnetism. It's two guys from the Czech Republic. Loki Man and Split are the two guys that are developing this. And these guys apparently kind of hooked up in high school in the late 90s. They were programming games on the side, tons of stuff that never got released. And then when the whole Apple App Store got going, they started making games for that. And they had some pretty good success with doing that. And now they're making their first big time VR game. And these guys look like they got a major hit on their hands. Hyperbolic Magnetism, these two guys from the Czech Republic. You guys are going to be driving around in Ferraris pretty soon in the Czech Republic, because I'm telling you, this game looks freaking incredible. We know how well Audio Shield has sold. We know that Soundboxing has done well. Airtone, these games do quite well in VR. Thumper, in fact, this kind of looks like Thumper. I mean, it looks like it has that visceral action where you're really into it. It also looks like it's going to be a hell of a workout and incredibly energetic with a pumping soundtrack. So I got to tell you, Beat Saber has jumped way the hell up. In fact, I got to add this to all of the most wanted charts, because this game is coming into the top 10 for all of the most wanted charts. It looks like a sensational action rhythm game. That is Beat Thumper. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into some regular news after I spent all that time on Beat Thumper. So PlayStation VR, there's going to be some PlayStation VR talks that are coming to GDC. Now, every year at GDC, there's a number of interesting panels that they have where they're talking about games that have already happened, games that are upcoming, or techniques to possibly use when you're creating a game. And so Sony recently announced that they're going to be bringing Moss and Bravo Team to GDC. So those games will be playable on the show floor. Of course, Moss is already available right now. Bravo Team comes out tomorrow, so that's not really tremendously exciting. But what is exciting is Ian Bickerstaff, who is the director of immersive video technology at Sony Interactive Entertainment Europe. He is going to be conducting a talk on the making of the Joshua Bell VR experience that hit PlayStation VR last year. Now, see, the thing is, this Joshua Bell VR experience, it's kind of a smoke and mirrors illusion of creating volumetric video with actual positional tracking, even though that's not really what it is. But when you experience it, that's what it feels like. I've talked about the Joshua Bell VR experience a couple of times, and I've said, look, if all 360 VR video looked anything like this, 360 VR video would not have such a bad reputation. We would be loving 360 VR video if they all looked as good as the Joshua Bell VR experience, because when you're in there, it really looks like this violinist, Joshua Bell. It looks like he's standing about 4 feet away from you playing the violin. I mean, he looks like he's right there. He looks like a real person. You're watching him, you're seeing him there. And then right over here is the piano player that's working with him as well. And then if you turn all the way around, you see like the recording booth back there, and you see people moving around in the recording booth as they're recording this. And all of this is happening. It's 360 video, but it looks volumetric. It looks really cool. And so Ian Bickerstaff, he's going to be there kind of explaining the smoke and mirrors tricks that Sony used to pull this off. And yeah, it might be smoke and mirrors, but hey, they did a hell of a good job. And if they can show other developers how to do this as well, maybe we can get a bit more of some interesting VR video in that kind of frame and that kind of style. In addition to Ian Bickerstaff, they're also going to have Sony London Studio is going to be there. They're going to be talking about, well, one of the developers, Gabor Seuss, who is the cinematic animation lead for Sony London Studio. These, of course, are the developers of London Heist. They're also going to be bringing out Blood and Truth later this year. He's going to be talking about player engagement in VR cinematics. So his idea is kind of like engaging the player during actual VR cutscenes and some of the things that they're doing to kind of give the player agency and make the player feel like when a cinematic cutscene is happening, it's not necessarily a hands-off experience, but that you're part of it. It's happening around you, you're feeling it. So that is going to be an interesting talk as well. That is Gabor Seuss, the cinematic animation lead for Sony London Studios. So if you happen to show up to GDC, there are a couple of interesting talks you might want to look into that are PlayStation VR related. Now, speaking of GDC, Vacation Simulator by Alchemy Labs, they are going to bring a playable build of this game to GDC, and the first playable demo will be available at GDC, so show attendees might be able to get an opportunity to try out Vacation Simulator for the first time. And there also is going to be a talk, a post-mortem that is going to be given on Rick and Morty Virtual Reality by Alex Schwartz and Devin Reimer. They're going to be giving a post-mortem kind of talking about how they made Virtual Reality and maybe also how they made Job Simulator and kind of their thoughts on that. So that will be interesting as well. And then continuing with GDC news is Google is also going to be showing up at GDC. In fact, they're having a Google Developer Day keynote on March 19th. So they are going to be giving some talks related to that. Let's see, Google's Nathan Martz, who is the product manager for AR/VR development tools, he's going to be giving a talk. Now, a lot of this is probably going to be related to ARCore or possibly different tools that are used to make Daydream software for the Daydream platform. But we have to remember that Google is somewhat of a sleeping giant that is in this VR/AR field, especially when it comes to AR, because we know about Google Glass. Now, obviously, Google Glass was kind of looked at as a failure, but there have been some rumors, there has been talk that basically Google is going to follow up Google Glass with another product that is kind of similar. Now, of course, Google has this big investment in Magic Leap, right? So how is all this going to work? Well, the truth of the matter is that although Google does have a significant investment in Magic Leap, they probably only have about a 20% stake in the overall company, maybe even smaller. I believe Alibaba has the largest stake of any outside investor in Magic Leap, and I think Google has the second largest stake, probably in the 20-ish% range. And so the problem with this is that if Magic Leap is this sensational product that takes over the world and it's all Magic Leap all the time and everybody's raving about Magic Leap and Magic Leap is the next big thing, if that were to happen, that might not necessarily be the best case scenario for Google because they don't have enough of an investment in that. Even though Sundar Pichai sits on the board of directors, if they owned like 50% of Magic Leap, that would be one thing, but they only own about 20%. So Google is going to have their own AR product at some point. They're going to have their own AR glasses at some point that are going to take full advantage of AR Core without actually having to hold a phone up everywhere. Instead, you'll just put the glasses on and it'll utilize that as well. So eventually we are going to get some announcements along this line. Now, is it going to happen here at GDC? Is Nathan Martz going to spill the beans on this? Probably not. It's probably going to happen at the Google I/O conference later in the year, if it even does happen in 2018. But there are lots of rumors that are swirling in the background related to Google and related to their own mainstream AR products. So we do have that to look forward to as well. And then the last story before I bounce out of here, talking about future products and future hardware, Microsoft Research has released a paper that is titled Creating the Perfect Illusion, What It Will Take to Create Lifelike Virtual Reality Headsets. Okay, so what happened here is Microsoft Research, they sat down kind of with a think tank type of mentality, and they thought, what would actually have to happen to create a VR headset that would provide you with a view of reality that would be nearly indistinguishable from actual reality? And so the idea was, let's say you could recreate a room. And so I'm looking at this room here and I put a headset on that freaking recreates this room indistinguishable. So I wouldn't necessarily know the difference if I'm looking at reality or not looking at reality. What is it going to take to get there? That's what this research paper was all about. Now, there is a full PDF of this research paper that you can download. You can check it all out. I got to be honest with you. I did not download this and check all of this out. But what I do have some highlights from this talk, and I do have some of the gist of what this research paper is all about. So why don't we go ahead and get into some of these facts? So basically, Microsoft is speculating that between the year 2025 and 2028, display technology will have matured to the point where it will offer lifelike capabilities. Basically, the displays themselves will have the ability to deliver a reality that is nearly indistinguishable from actual reality. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about a horizontal field of view of 210 degrees. We're talking about a vertical field of view of 135 degrees. We're talking about APDs of 60 pixels per degree. Now, I don't know if APD is like average pixel density or if it's average pixels per degree, but an APD of 60 pixels per degree would translate to 20/20 vision, and we're talking about refresh rates up to 1800 hertz. 1800 hertz, oh my God, that is incredible. Now, the big problem here, though, is that Microsoft, in this research, they've determined that while the headsets are up to the task by 2025 to 2028, the headsets will be there from a technology standpoint. Unfortunately, the processing power will not be there. What they've discovered is that the GPU technology by this time, at these kinds of resolutions with that kind of field of view, might be able to render about 180 frames per second at that kind of resolution. So obviously nowhere near 1800 hertz. We're talking about 180 hertz. Now that is double what we have now, which is 90. So that would still be a pretty decent improvement. And that basically what they could do at that point is that they could generate intermediate frames using cheap approximating techniques such as image-based rendering. So those are kind of the highlights that I have from this talk. Like I said, I haven't digged into all of this and looked at it in a real detailed way, but I thought we could just bring this up a little bit. But the thing that really jumped out to me, though, is the 1800 hertz. See, I think a lot of people, we think about resolution, we think about field of view, we think about foveated rendering and eye tracking and all of this stuff, but a lot of times we don't really think about that refresh rate. And I do remember Gabe Newell in that one interview, he was talking about 200 hertz and stuff like that. So I believe that the refresh rate is a really big deal, because one of the issues that we have in VR right now, a lot of these companies want to see a day where somebody is willing to wear a VR headset for like 7 hours in a row. And I just don't see that future until we get to the point where there is no eye strain, no eye fatigue, where when you take off that headset, it's not this like, back to reality. It's going to take me a couple of minutes to kind of adjust. It's not going to be like that. You take the headset off, you feel completely normal, because the refresh rate is just incredibly high at 1800 hertz. That would be absolutely spectacular. But it's amazing to me, though, that they're talking about 2025 to 2028. That's only 7 to 10 years away from now. I kind of thought this was more like 20 years away rather than 7 to 10. But again, we do have the GPU problem, so it'll take a while for that to catch up. But at least on the hardware side, at least from the headset side, the possibility is there. So that is tremendously exciting. So anyway, guys, went a little bit long on this episode, but that's going to go ahead and wrap it up. This has been episode 111 of the Daily Vlog series for Monday, March 5th. Everybody have a wonderful Monday, and I will be back, of course, tomorrow with more news and maybe more game talk as well. And so I'll see everybody tomorrow. Take it easy. Later.